There's a moment that happens to a lot of internet users, somewhere between their mid 20s and early 30s. You open an app, see a reference to something you loved as a kid, and feel a tiny spark of warmth. Before you can interrogate that feeling, it has already done its job. You're watching the video, you're clicking the link, you're remembering who you used to be online. That feeling's not accidental. And it's not new. What is new is how aggressively platforms and creators are learning to monetize it. Nostalgia has become one of the most reliable marketing tools on the modern internet. Not because it reminds us of the past, but because it stabilizes audience trust in a landscape that is constantly shifting. When platforms reward familiarity and creators age alongside their audiences, nostalgia becomes less about memory and more about maintaining relevance. This isn't about one creator doing something wrong. It's about a system that increasingly rewards emotional continuity over creative risk. Nostalgia marketing didn't start on YouTube or TikTok. It shows up in early 20th century advertising, especially during periods of social or economic instability. When the future feels uncertain, the past becomes comforting. Brands learned very early that invoking childhood tradition or simpler times helped people spend money during moments of anxiety. What the internet did was personalize that strategy. Instead of selling a generalized past, creators sell a shared one, a specific fandom, a specific era of the platform, a tone, a joke structure, a style of sincerity that feels anchored to when the audience first felt seen online. This is where internet culture diverges from traditional media. The past being referenced is not decades ago. Sometimes it's only like 5 or 10 years back, but on the internet, that's an eternity. One of the least discussed aspects of online culture is that creators and audiences age together. A channel that started in early 2010s often built its identity around a teenage or young adult audience that is not fully grown. Platforms, however, don't age gracefully. Algorithms shift, monetization models tighten, content that once thrived organically now has to compete with sponsorships, short-form clips, and brand safety pressures. In that environment, nostalgia becomes a shortcut. It reassures the audience that the creator they trusted before is still here, still safe, and still familiar. And importantly, it reassures the platform that this content will retain viewers. At this point, nostalgia is less about joy and more about trust maintenance. When creators reference their early years, old characters, or formative internet moments, they're not just reminiscing. They're reminding the audience of a relationship that already exists. Parasocial bonds thrive on consistency. Nostalgia reinforces the idea that the creator has not fundamentally changed, even when the platform, the business model, and the incentives absolutely have. This is why nostalgic content often resurfaces during moments of transition, rebrands, audience drop-offs, shift towards younger demographics, or moments where scrutiny increases. It is emotional grounding in a volatile ecosystem. There's nothing inherently manipulative about nostalgia. The issue arises when it becomes the primary value proposition. When the past is used to avoid accountability, resist growth, or flatten criticism into misunderstandings about tone or intent, nostalgia stops being reflective and starts being defensive. This is where the line between memory and marketing blurs, especially when creators lean on childlike aesthetics, early internet humor, or callbacks to eras when boundaries online were looser and expectations were lower. The audience is not just being reminded of the past. They're being asked to emotionally return to it. Modern platforms reward content that keeps users emotionally regulated. Nostalgia does that exceptionally well. It lowers friction. It reduces uncertainty. It keeps people watching without demanding much critical engagement. For creators navigating increasingly corporate platforms, nostalgia offers a way to remain algorithmically friendly while still feeling authentic. But authenticity in this context is being measured against memory rather than present behavior. What this pattern tells us is that the internet is no longer primarily about novelty. It's about managed familiarity. The platforms want predictability. Creators want stability. Audiences want to feel anchored in a space that changes faster than any previous media environment. Nostalgia becomes the compromise. It allows creators to age without fully transforming. It allows audiences to grow up without fully letting go. And it allows platforms to package emotional continuity as engagement. Nostalgia is not the villain here. It's a signal, a sign that the internet is maturing and struggling with what comes next. When the past becomes the safest place to operate, it's worth asking why the present feels so risky. And as we keep seeing familiar aesthetics, tones, and characters resurface, the question is not whether nostalgia works, because it clearly does. The question is what happens when the internet relies on memory to maintain trust instead of earning it in real time. If this topic feels uncomfortably familiar, that is kind of the point. Nostalgia marketing works best on audiences who have grown up online and are now being asked to reconcile who they were with what the internet has become. As a historian, that tension is the part that matters to me. Not the individual moments, but the patterns that repeat when platforms mature, audiences age, and incentives shift. We're going to keep seeing this. More throwbacks, more callbacks, more emotional soft landings disguised as content. And in the next case study, we're going to look at what happens when nostalgia is not just a marketing layer, but the foundation of an entire online persona. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!